Okay, it's 2 o'clock and the presentation will start. And today's presentation is actually going to be on emergency procedures, responsibilities and emergency equipment. These three registers just here. And it's amazing throughout all the client systems how many people aren't really using these three registers as much as they should, being that they are an extremely important part of any kind of safety process. So how do you use these registers, or when should you use them and so forth? Well, it depends on your industry. For an example, every racecourse in New South Wales is a client of Online WHSs, and I go around and do many talks relating to when I go to all the race clubs and so forth, and the major talks is identifying their emergency procedures for a race club. So where you got a racetrack, you're exposed out in the sun, but fire would be the first procedure they need to build an emergency procedure for. But also, being that they're actually exposed out into the elements, one of the other things that they need to identify is emergency procedure relating to the weather, storms, lightning, wind. So depending on what your industry is, you need to identify what activities you undertake, where they're undertaken at, what they're using, and then develop your emergency procedures around those processes. So you just, by selecting your emergency procedure section, you should be, say for an example, developing emergency procedures not just for an overall kind of site, but you should be actually doing it for all individual sites, because obviously different sites are going to have different locations and evacuation points and all these different processes. So it's really, I see a lot of people actually do a generic kind of emergency procedure, and you're looking at, you really need to identify it for the actual situation or site that the process is going to be developed for. As normal, everything is up in the right-hand corner. You can select Add Procedure, and throughout the system, you're always relating something to a site. I might choose another site other than that. So there is preloaded fire, but you can actually add your own type in here. Like, say for an example, if you're a school or something like that, you could actually put there relating to maybe an allergic reaction to a child eating, whatever it may be. So as well as, of course, you would have the other ones, fire, armed robbery maybe, but you've also got, might be, bomb kind of processes, all these different things that you would build an emergency procedure for. But at the moment, let's say for an example, just pretend we're building one for fire. Now, most times when you're actually building an emergency procedures, you would actually have a statement of commitment relating to that. You can actually enter a policy in here showing your company's kind of commitment to this procedure of fire. So you can do that, or if you wanted to, you could just say as per attached or whatever it may be, or see policies in the policy section. Let's select next. Now you can actually develop a procedure through the system. This works very much like if you've used the safe work method procedure in the activity register, works in a very similar way, where you can actually enter the procedure, the potential hazard. This brings up the risk matrix. Again, you can actually bring up your own matrix. You can enter your own matrix in the user admin dashboard and upload your own graphic. So your graphic is there. Obviously, it won't work like that one where you can click on it, but you would just enter the number. You can enter the control measure to reduce the likelihood of that potential hazard, and then you can actually have the residual risk. Residual risk is if this control measure is implemented, well, what's the new risk rating? Without the control measure, obviously it might be rated 1, but with this new control measure, the residual risk is what actually happens when this control measure is implemented to reduce the likelihood of that occurring. Review date for continual improvement, we'll just put in a couple of days, and you can select save. It puts a line in there, and you can actually, say for an example, add another step, add another step, add another step, and keep on building a procedure. So it actually builds the document for you. So, say for an example, you see a lot of those posters, or a lot of major companies and buildings have their emergency procedures printed up on each floor, as they should. So and it's got all the different locations and so forth. but it does have steps on actually have been doing procedures. So you could actually implement those steps there if you wish. It's totally up to you. By using these icons over here, you can actually either delete that emergency procedure line, or you can actually select this and edit this line. Or as I mentioned before, you can actually add another step. Going through this system here, you would have seen when you first got online WHS, there would have been none of these alerting systems in place here. But you can actually add your alerting system, and it's in creating this process like this, it's amazing how many people have actually gone through and developed their emergency procedures and realised that they have, not only did they have no emergency procedures in place, but they had no alerting systems, or they had an emergency procedure in place, they had no alerting systems at all. And so here's a great way for you to actually go through this step by step and, just make sure that you've got things in place. So alerting system, well, if something happens like a fire or whatever kind of emergency procedure you're developing it for, well, how are you going to alert whoever it may be needs to be alerted to either, one, evacuate, or two, that alert someone to call an ambulance, or alert someone to actually do a procedure, or get the first aid kit, or whatever it may be that you need to do. So yelling out is not an alerting system. So a good idea. Say for an example, with a lot of people, they didn't have they were exposed out in the outback and so forth. Not much power in these race clubs and so forth. What happens, you get a little air horn, and you can actually use the air horn as a kind of alerting system. Totally up to you. Identify the situation and then make sure that you have the proper alerting systems. So it's a very good idea is when you're going through all these steps is contact your local fire brigade and get them to come out and actually help you, do and identify all these different things. Depends on who they are and so forth. You might be able to, organise some kind of meal for them or whatever it may be. I know I actually used to do that in a former business where I actually used to get the fire people come down and train my staff on how to use fire extinguishers and all these different things and so forth. And, it was a great way to educate the staff. But with the alerting system here, you can actually add alerting system here. You can make a person responsible to actually review that alerting system and maintain it. You're looking at, once that's done, it'll come into this list here where you can actually select. Obviously, you would have in most cases multiple alerting systems. And next. So this third step actually comes here. This is actually picking up your emergency equipment register. These three registers here are all interlinked to create this one kind of document in the emergency procedures. So in the emergency equipment, so if you want to add to this list here, you can add it here. It'll automatically go into your emergency equipment register, but anything in your emergency equipment register that you've had will be listed here. And then you'll just go down and identify what needs to be done. These maintenance dates and next maintenance dates are actually obviously from picking up the emergency equipment dates that you've actually had in there. You can set evacuation drill date for whatever it may be that you need to do. And you can actually have a review date of this procedure just for continual improvement. And the person responsible to review. Finish. So if I go to this, the one here that I just created, if I go view, you'll see that it's actually created a document. You've got your policy statement, you've got your emergency equipment, you've got your alerting system. So you can actually create that and you've got your emergency steps down the bottom, but you can generate that as a PDF and print it out, stick it, whatever it may be, next to around the procedures and processes or on the walls or wherever it may be that you want to do. But this is emergency responsibilities here. So what you can actually do there, how that is done, if I go to the responsibilities register, obviously if we were going to do it for fire, we're going to have a fire warden, aren't we? So we're going to have a fire warden for that site. Yes, we had one at the other site, but we haven't got one for the site of Penrith. So we can actually select Penrith. You can have a review date to review that position itself. So We'll review that again in November at the same time we're doing the emergency procedure. And you can make a person responsible. Now, this is the person responsible to do the review. You need to hit the plus sign to take it over to the responsibility register. That means it won't email alert me, but it will put it that this item to be reviewed in my to-do list. So you can actually set up an alert in the alert section, in your alert section up here, but instead of receiving hundreds of alerts throughout the system, might be a good idea if you just put it, say, for an example, person review, you know it's going to go into that person's to-do list. Now, the difference between this cell here as a responsibility to review the document or review that position, down the bottom, here's the actual person. It's actually going to be the fire warden. So I'm going to make myself a fire warden, and we can actually make other people a fire warden as well. We'll make Mike Fulcher a fire warden, and we'll select save. So I could also, say for an example, have a responsibility in that section as first aid officer or whatever it may be. Depending on the procedure and the scenario, well, you'd have to identify responsibilities relating to the scenario that you've identified. So we go down here. I just won't put that review date and so forth, and we'll make Lisa the person for first aid, and let's select save. So this has kept this in this register here. If I actually went to the individual site, it would only actually list the responsibilities relating to Penrith if I was in the Penrith site and so forth, but it would also list the PFB Enterprises site, because PFB Enterprises is what's known as the general site, and anything related to the general site is seen in every single site. If you've got an area where your site has been broken up in departments and so forth, well then yes, you could relate responsibilities to your general site. But if you've got, say for an example, different locations of sites, well then you would definitely need to make responsibilities for all the individual sites and not just the general site or the main site, because you need to make sure that the fire warden, first aid and so forth are at that site. It's common sense. So let's go back to the main page. Let's go back to the emergency procedures here now, and let's select view next to the fire process we did. And there you'll see it's actually listed the responsibilities of those people. So it kind of builds this document. So it's, and then you're looking at, it's put the maintenance dates and all these different things. And that's why it's very important when you actually go and building this process, is that you go to the emergency equipment, and since you've identified the scenario, well, obviously you're going to need to make sure that you've identified the emergency equipment needed for that scenario. So enter your emergency equipment in there, and again, and some people, kind of do this, and they really shouldn't. They should be doing it for every single site. They just relate it to the general site. No, if you've got different sites, you would actually relate it to all your different sites. If you've got different departments, you might want to relate it to different departments. Totally up to you. But it's a good idea, say for an example, for you to enter, if you're one location, just let's say if it's a school or university or something like that, and you've got multi areas within that kind of facility, you should be actually entering all those areas, building A, building B, building thing. You can even take it down to classroom if you wanted to, but it's totally up to you. And you can actually relate it to all those individual areas. Because what this is going to do, later, when this gets upgraded in the new kind of version that we're bringing out in May, is you'll be able to print out literally a map to identify all the different emergency equipment over the entire facility. So, and that's something that we'll be taking this kind of area to, mid to later this year, where you'll actually be able to upload or build a map inside the system, and it'll actually print out a really nice procedure, emergency equipment, people responsible, plus a really nice map of your facility where you've identified your evacuation points and so forth. So if I come, say, for an example, into the emergency equipment, I'll just let me just select. I'll add another piece of equipment. So let's just say, for an example, I'm just going to enter this one here so you can clearly identify what I've entered. Let's relate it to the site of Penrith. Now, I can relate it to an activity or whatever it may be. So but I'm just going to relate it to general, and I can relate it to a machine. These fields probably went in around about 6 to 8 months ago, and part of the reason why they actually went in, the client requested it because their trucks had to have a first aid kit. So you're looking at, if you've got kind of delivery vans or any kind of vans or cars or so forth, really at the end of the day, that vehicle, if it's a place of work for the employee, which it is, if they're a rep of some sort or they're a truck driver or so forth, it will need to have the appropriate first aid kit, fire extinguisher and all those different things inside that car or inside that truck. So that's why these here items were here, because then it can relate back to the vehicle. So you can have previous maintenance dates. That's the maintenance date that was actually done prior, and then you've actually got the next maintenance date, 3 months or 6 months in advance, whatever it may be, that you can actually schedule that for. And again, this is the person responsible to organise the maintenance for that emergency equipment. You must take it over into this cell here. You can set up email alerts, again, just like I mentioned before. You can set email alerts up in here. But if you wanted to do it here, this is going to put it into this person's to-do list, on that date, and highlight that, with the icon if they actually missed that. So I'll put that emergency equipment in here. You can see that's actually updated those fields there. When the maintenance is actually done, the person comes out and gives you that list. When they gives you that list, you can actually then use this perform maintenance to enter the date of the maintenance, what was done, and even, say, for an example, select the contractor. Now, this is really important. So a lot of people really don't understand that. I do a lot of presentations, and when I say to people that you need to make sure that you enter your contractors into your contractor section, they go, "Oh, we don't use contractors," but everyone uses contractors. So at the end of the day, nearly everyone uses contractors. I'll say that. Sorry, but most businesses, what they do is they've got fire extinguishers, smoke detectors, exit lights, and all those different things. And obviously, a contractor has to come out and actually check. If you're in a building where it's actually done by the body corporate, or whatever it may be, well, it's a different kind of scenario. But you're looking at, most businesses have the responsibility to make sure that those things are up to date in a safe working order. Now, you're actually hiring an independent person to come out to do that test and tag and do that testing. So that's why they should be in this contractor section. So you have got all their qualifications. You have got all their insurances, because you go and use that fire extinguisher and it's not working correctly. And when it's investigated that fire extinguisher wasn't working correctly, what the first thing they're going to do is check the last time it was actually maintained. And if you maintained it, and who maintained it. So you've got the person down the road to come here and they do the test and tag of the fire extinguishers. They've signed off that it's okay. Well, the problem is that this person actually doesn't have the proper qualifications, or they mightn't have insurances in place. So if any person is actually doing any emergency equipment and or whatsoever, every single one of those people, if they're going to be testing tag and testing that equipment and maintaining it, which they will be, you need to have them in your contractor section. That's why the system, when creating the system, everything interlinks into everything, because doing something in one register will cause a reaction in another register. And that's a clear example that, your emergency equipment, even though you've got it in the list, you think, okay, I'm just going to get it maintained and so forth. And, Bob comes out and he comes out and does the fire extinguishers, and he comes out every 6 months and tests them where we're okay. Well, at the end of the day, Bob is not qualified, not insured. So you need to make sure you identify that. So in saying that, with this register as well, a lot of people have put every single fire extinguisher inside the system, or every single first aid kit and so forth. Maybe the first aid kit, you could actually put a first aid kit and identify it if it's actually sitting in some kind of truck or van or whatever it may be, car and so forth. You could do that. But when it comes to fire extinguishers, other than being in a car, if it's in a building, you would actually put fire extinguishers related to the site of Penrith, for an example. So it's because when the person comes out and does the test and tag, they're not just coming out to test one fire extinguisher. They come out and test all the fire extinguishers. So when they come out and test all the fire extinguishers, that's why you would have the type as fire extinguishers related to the site of Penrith. You could relate it to an activity, wherever it may be, if you wanted to. You got your last maintenance dates, but then when they do that, you would actually hit that and you would upload that document that they give you. And they'll give you a document with all the items that they've actually done. So whether it's a first aid kit and so forth, same thing, they'll actually go through, if they're coming out and testing your first aid kit with all your contents and maybe replenishing whatever it may be it's been used, and making sure that everything's up to the order. Same thing is that you would actually get that document off them, scan it and upload it. Just remember, when you're scanning that document, it's not really, even though it says it's a PDF, it's not really a PDF. So just make sure that you open up that scanned document and then save as PDF and then upload it, and you'll find that it'll upload fine. So it's so these kind of three sections all interlink, but as you can see, they're very, very important in doing so. So make sure if you the thing, yes, you can actually get it to be in your to-do list if you made the person responsible, but you can actually set up email alerts for every single process. So this emergency equipment is this one here, the equipment. So if I go add employee to alert, select the alert type as equipment, not plant. Plant and equipment's picking up this register here, the plant and equipment register. Whereas, say for an example, the equipment register is picking up the emergency equipment register. So let's just pick up that and let's relate it to the site of Penrith, and we can actually make a person responsible for that. And we're going to set that as 1. And the reason why we're going to set that as 1, only the incident and hazard alerts are set at 0 because you want them to be immediate. The 1 is that it actually, even though the expiry date might be the 15th of the 2nd, 2019, if it's the 15th today, it still hasn't expired. It expires tomorrow. So it's set at 1. So just remember that when you're setting alerts. If you don't see that it needs to be set at 0, all the other items will be set at 1. So let's go back to the emergency procedure section, and you can publish a register, and whatever it may be, all registers you can actually publish. You can publish the emergency equipment register and so forth, but it's a good idea. Well, here's this where you can actually upload the emergency site map of your process, and then in that upgrade that I mentioned, that'll automatically insert into that published PDF. So that's going to be happening later this year. And you're looking at, make sure you identify your emergency procedures first. Try to set out all the things that's needed. Good idea to speak to certain experts in that field to identify what actually has to be done, and then develop your emergency procedure from that. But having an emergency procedure inside the system here, again, is useless if no one knows about it. So what you need to do after you develop that emergency procedure is go to the user admin dashboard, go to the induction section, and then build an induction. Now, your system has already been preloaded with an employee induction, and I think from memory, it's slide 14, 15, and 16 that needs to be updated. So it's let me just page down here. Sorry about this. So all right, if you come down to slide 13, 14, 15, you've got your emergency procedure here, and this has entered some text here. You might want to update this, okay? Update this and tailor it to your needs. You might even have all the scenarios in there. This here, when it comes to the procedure there, you might get rid of that procedure and put the procedure that you actually built into that procedure builder. Or if you wanted to, you could actually build this into the current one that you've got in the procedure. So print out in the document, and then when they're also going through this induction, they can actually identify the procedure. So that's probably your best idea or best bet. And if I come down here, slide 15 is about the emergency personnel. So you've got categories in there. Again, you can change that to suit your needs. You would just enter who that emergency personnel is. If you've got multi-sites, you should really, at the end of the day, do this all over for each site. Or if you wanted to do just with one, you would actually put all your different sites and all those different pieces, people who are responsible for certain things. And in here, I've actually even put upload your company's evacuation map here. So a good idea, say for example, and I did the same, I did the thing for the race clubs, Racing New South Wales and so forth, is just went on to Google Earth above the race club, just basically took a capture of a picture and then identified the emergency procedures and drew them up. But you should have some kind of site map of your building of some sort. If not, speak to someone that might be able to get you that. And what you can do then is identify your evacuation routes and your evacuation points, and you would actually enter them in here as and then make sure that you're actually inducting your employees into all the emergency kind of processes that you've actually done. So this one, you might even say, for example, this is a general one. You've got evacuation assembly point. You've got all these different things, first aid, so location of fire equipment. So this is doing a lot of kind of that emergency inducting for you, emergency procedure inductions, but depends on what you actually entered into that emergency procedure that you would need to actually either adjust that video, that induction, being that now it with the induction section here, if I go manage quiz next to this employee induction, you go, okay, I want to actually add to this kind of induction and so forth. You can actually insert a slide in between two slides now. So you'll see that there's a feature there that, basically, so I can go insert slide, and it's going to insert a slide in between this slide and the other side. So therefore, you can actually update the current induction inside the system and add all your different scenarios that you have identified. You can even delete slides. You can really change this. That was an upgrade that was in the system around about 6 months ago, just from requests from people saying, I'd really like to, insert a slide in between another slide. So have a look at that. So make sure you do these here, identify your responsibilities. After you've developed all your processes, then build your induction after that and update the one currently in there. And make sure you actually, assign it to the employees, and away you go. So I hope you enjoyed that. I know I waffled on a little bit, but I'll cut that bit out as well. But thank you. If you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to send me an email, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.